And, I think for people that are in marketing and business and sort of like creative positions, there is a fatigue that comes with being at one company too long because you just end up learning how to work at that company
Bad
and
company.
not how to do business.
3, 2, 1, go!
All right, we're back. Rush Hour Pod. I'm T-Dub. It's Justin. Happy March Madness. I got my March
Yes,
Madness shirt
sir.
on. Weekend's kicking off with some basketball, but we've got some topical stuff here. But in before we get to all the topical things happening in tech, let's roll with career. You had a LinkedIn post, and for those that aren't following Justin, I'll put that link in the bio. But I don't want to say went viral, but did really well. A topic about jumping around, having lots of jobs, and the benefit, the pros and cons of that. So I thought we'd start with that. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good. And maybe even before we jump in, just sorry everybody, we haven't dropped the episode in a while. I was sick as a dog last week. These kids got me, but super excited to be back with y'all and T-Dub. And yeah, so on this post that I did recently, I've been reflecting a lot about my career lately, especially as I transition and do kind of more fractional work, fractional CMO kind of growth consulting work, which has been super rewarding. I was kind of looking back at my career arc, and one of the things that I've heard from recruiters and some other folks from time to time is, hey man, like you really had a lot of jobs, or that's kind of like the nice way to saying, or yeah, your career is kind of all over the place. And for a while that stung, but as I thought more about it, I actually kind of see it as a superpower now. And particularly in 2025. And the reason for that is because, my career spanned 15 years. Over those 15 years, I've been at about 10 companies. And the companies have been, I founded one. I've been at early stage companies. I've been at growth stage companies. I've been at, late stage startups and companies like Microsoft and Amex that, fully mature. And what that is allowed me to do is really see a lot of the challenges that companies have at all stages, be able to triangulate that in a way to create, positive outcomes for the businesses that I've worked at. And I think that particularly within this AI era where every other week, I mean, we talk about it on the pod, there's new tech coming out. There's, a lot of acquisition, consolidation, et cetera. Like this is a time for adaptability, flexibility to shore up all the skills and things that you've learned to try to be able to pivot at the right time and kind of like leverage those insights. And I see now my experience across all those different companies has allowed me to just be very adaptable and flexible and solve a lot of challenges and problems across a ton of different scenarios. And that is what has helped me stand out and stand apart, and also allowed me to be really successful in my different opportunities. And I know that for you, you've kind of been in the same position as well with the career that you've had and companies you worked at with. So we'd love to kind of get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I also have always felt like it was a strength, because if you go out there and you work at a bunch of different companies, you could say it doesn't look like you have any consistency, what's going on with your career, but it's also like, hey, you get to see and experience how a bunch of different companies succeed. Especially if you've been, I was at Twitch for almost 4.5 years, 5 years, Zynga for like 3 or 4 years, big companies seeing IPOs and mergers and like how they operate and how they do things. When you can, like you say, adapt to those and understand them, you kind of find your sweet spot in what works. And, I think for people that are in marketing and business and sort of like creative positions, there is a fatigue that comes with being at one company too long because you just end up learning how to work at that company
Bad
and
company.
not how to do business. And I think, the example I always give is Amazon and Zynga. Those two are like complete polar opposites in how you work. They're doing similar things, but at Zynga, I'll give you the example, like presentations and GTM plans and how you launch a game was like slides, no words, all visuals, use data as you can, but it was really like tell a cohesive story through your slides. And like you do the storytelling in the slides, give you a visual representation of your story. So you'd sit down with the executives and you'd go over it, like, here's our launch plan for Cityville or Farmville or whatever it is, and you'd go over it and they'd ask questions, they'd poke holes in it, da da da. You'd put a bunch of stuff in the appendix, boom. Then you iron out a plan and you roll fast. Then at Amazon and Twitch, as me and you fell
Yeah.
into, it was 1 pager, 3 pager, 6 pagers. Write it all out. Write your story. Don't tell your story. No visuals at all words. And Bezos's thing was like, there's nothing, there's nowhere to hide. I can sit here, spend 30 minutes at the beginning of my meeting, read your document, and I can make comments and I can walk away from it and feeling good. And they both make sense, but like going through the rigors of both of those for me has done wonders for my career, because now I roll into a new company and it's like, how does my manager operate? Oh, he's from Amazon. I get it. Oh, how does the VP work? He's from PayPal. I know that, like, they like this style, and I'm able to adapt
Mhm.
and adjust accordingly. And I think if you are just at one company, it's very likely that you're going to struggle in terms of like adaptability when you enter a new startup and things are moving fast and you're figuring things out. And I like there when I'm hiring, I think about that. Right. It's
Yeah.
one thing, a jumper. If you're spending 3 months at a place and you're jumping all over, if you're like 3, 4, 5 years in our kind of roles, I think it's pretty reasonable to jump again, because you do learn a lot and you're out there in the space and you're learning new skills and adapting to things. And I think it's great. Like
Yeah.
I think people should consider that, right? If you're getting, like, they say comfort is the enemy of growth. And a lot of times that's true. If you're really comfortable in your job and you've kind of figured it all out and you're coasting, it may be time to, I know it's crazy to say that in this environment, but it's like you want to challenge yourself. Either,
Yeah.
we talk about side hustles and other things, but like, that's kind of one way to do it. You keep pushing yourself till you're uncomfortable, and maybe, other people will say, "Oh, the guy's not focused," because, but it's like, hey, you're pushing yourself to learn stuff. So I think people need to really consider that as an option. Like, not being comfortable is not the way of the era, but I think it's important. Like, you really learn a lot when you're put yourself in crazy positions and
Oh yeah. I
you have
can.
to do things.
And I could definitely resonate with that. And I know you've worked at a number of different companies and stages. A lot of the ones I worked at have been like very early stage as well. Hey, you're the
Right.
first marketing person, or you're the
Yep.
founder of something, and there is no playbook, and you're coming in, and there's kind of nothing that's there. And what that has allowed me to do is, like, anytime that I'm in a new scenario, I kind of know how to add value really quickly. And that has been super helpful because I've seen like how you add value at a lot of different stage companies and sizes. And okay, we have $1 million of budget, or we have like $10,000 budget a month, right?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's going to be a different orientation. That's going to be different planning, different, stakeholders you're probably going to have to go to, et cetera. And to triangulate all that, only comes from kind of wisdom and being at a number of different companies. The only area I would push back with you on is like having, it having to be 3 to 5 years. I feel like, and maybe this is kind of more in growth roles, like 1.5 to 2 years. I feel like you can kind of learn a lot in that period of time, and it doesn't
That's
necessarily,
fair.
especially with earlier stage, it doesn't necessarily mean you're kind of jumping. But yeah, we're not suggesting this. You're at a company 2 months, 3 months, and then you just kind of keep hopping around. Like, I
Yeah.
think, a
That's not good.
year and a half, 2 years is probably kind of like a minimum where you want to be,
I mean, if you're
and
talking
from there.
if you're talking startup, 1 year is an eternity. Like, truthfully, like,
Yeah,
things change, plans change quarter to quarter in those instances. So yeah, I agree. Like, it very much depends. If you're like startup founder mode, 1 year is forever.
yeah,
And yeah, but me and you, we've been through, there are signs now, like we talk about all the time when we join an early company, like, hey,
yeah,
when expectations, like, we know what to expect, but when you're hearing on the other side what they expect out of you, like, hey, I got no budget and I want hyper growth and all of these
yeah.
crazy things, and I'm not giving you any product support, that's like a giant red flag of like,
Yes,
it's not going to go well for you, like,
a
straight
hundred
up.
percent,
It
a
is
hundred
time
percent.
to brush up the resume, because like you cannot win that scenario, right? It's like, I'm not giving you money. I want you to magically make this appear, and I'm not giving you any product support. And like, we are what we are. I'm adding you into the mix, and you're just gonna go make this thing $1 billion company. That's really tough.
Yep.
But
I think that's a
other
really
people, yeah, that's like probably the most common thing, right? Because they hired you because they don't know. how to do some of these things related to growth, and their expectations are, hey, your job is growth, your title is growth. I expect 10x or 100x or whatever is in their brain.
Just
That
go
seems
viral. I need you to go viral within the
right.
first few weeks, and then we'll be good. Like
Yeah.
everything else is good. We just need somebody to help us go viral. I'll tell you one thing, man. Like I think just to build off your point, I think the most prescient thing that you said was like, "Hey, you go in and then you kind of learn some stuff. You're like, oh, the hairs on the back of the neck, standing up. Like this doesn't feel right." And I think that's why it's also really important. And I think I've gotten better at this over my career and kind of with wisdom about really doing a good job and kind of interviewing the company yourself,
Yes.
like as you're going through the process, asking the questions and getting kind of feedback on expectations and what you're expected to do in the first 30, 60, 90 days. Because sometimes you'll be at a company and it'll only be for sure, ideally you're there long enough that you're learning and adding value, and then if you go to the next company, or a lot of times early stage startups, they don't just necessarily work out. It is what it is. But if you go and you're like, oh, this is a really shiny job with a big paycheck, and this it seems a little weird, like my spidey senses are tingling a bit, but I just want to take the money. I have never found that to work out
Yeah.
well,
Agreed.
even if you're making more money, because inevitably it just won't, either the amount of work that you're doing or the longevity there, it's not going to be good. So I think you need to be thoughtful about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been put in situations where it's like, I need a job right now, whether it's like, homes about to be bought, and you're like, oh no, I gotta have a job so I can get this loan. So I'm gonna take the next one I get and figure it out. And other times you're like, hey, I need something right now while this other job is kind of on the way. So I'm gonna take this job and support it for a year and move on to the next one, things like that. Like, yeah, I've done that. So I get it. I understand all the motives behind it, but it's also like you're coming in, as you said, to do a job, and you got to be transparent with it. I've always had really good relationships with my manager in terms of like, hey, this is what I'm here for. This is what I think I could do. Then you go from there.
Yeah. I think if there's like kind of like a final takeaway from this piece, it's having a lot of different experiences can be a very, powerful and helpful, you know, uh, background within our space and tech, especially when things are evolving really quickly. And if you have a nonlinear path and you're at all concerned, apprehensive about that, you might actually be more prepared for what's to come than anyone else, especially in this age of AI. And you could see that as a strength. Try to learn as much as possible, but not worry, but so much about kind of like the signal, because you have a lot of value to add.
Yeah, and don't be scared of like, hey, I've never done that before. I don't know. I'm not sure how that works. Those are good signs to me,
Yeah.
because then you can jump in there and try to figure it out. That take on the challenge. I know it's a little daunting at times to think, oh, this is how I've always worked, and this place does it different. I don't want to do that. I'd say jump in there and try it. Like, it's not gonna. You'll learn whether or not that's for you, and hopefully you'll come away a better employee, person, development wise. It's something you shouldn't be scared of.
Yeah.
Would you, would you
100%.
agree?
I think so. I think that my biggest strengths, in addition to just consistency, has been maintaining a growth mindset and trying to be humble about what I know and don't know. And I think if you can do those things well and authentically maintain relationships, I think the intersection between all of those things can be really powerful in developing a successful career.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think, and being honest with yourself with all of this in terms of like you are an evolving being. Right here, this is not an end all be all at every moment. So a lot of people like go gung ho type A personality, got to be on top of everything. But like you got to give yourself a little grace, and like you're learning and figuring things out, and having that mentality is really helpful, because then it
Yeah.
keeps you a little humble and honest, and you're like, hey, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to figure it out. And as I figure it out, that's a win for me. Whether or not that's a
Hmm.
win for the company is a whole separate thing. But like for you, you should be tackling those things. For
Totally.
those that are working it out, keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
Want to jump into some news for the week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. So there's been a lot of headlines and conversation about all things kind of Elon and Tesla.
Yes.
And going into the beginning of the year, there was kind of like the Tesla Trump bump, and Elon coming in, and everything was honky dory and amazing, and shareholders and everyone else is super happy. What we've seen since the beginning of the year, since that initial bump, is a pretty significant fall. And I don't think we're going to get into kind of like our own personal feeling necessarily on Elon. Maybe we dive into that a little bit, but just to kind of focus on the business. Tesla stock is down 35% from the 52-week highs. 2024 delivery numbers were soft. The EV market growth it's still growing, but it's slower growth, and China competition is heating up. And then you have all this time that Elon is spending on Doge, which I think has been, had a pretty meaningful impact on perception of the business. But then, people kind of feeling like he's maybe pulling away. You also have FSD still in beta with safety and regulatory scrutiny, Cybertruck delivery delays and mixed reviews. Like not a lot of great stuff going on. So I know that you've been, a pretty big Tesla bull for a long time, but there's been a lot that's happened, especially in this first quarter. So how are you feeling about it? Like with all this news and stuff he's doing, like how does that make you feel as an investor?
I mean, I think long term, and so I didn't buy into this thing over the last 6 months. I've been in it a long time. So for me, this is one of the blips in this, but the slope is still positive. If you look
Yeah.
over 6 months before the election, it was, it's probably down 1%. So given there's a mountaintop in there, but overall, it seems like we're still holding steady. I think it is a lot of questions around, hey, is Doge and the government stuff going to have a long lasting effect on Tesla as the company? And, you're seeing all this backlash, and it's probably, legitimate. Like it's legitimate concerns. But I
Yeah.
look at like self driving and all the things that they're doing and the robots and that not, I am still bullish on all of the actual tech and product and usage and the batteries and all of that. Still incredible stuff. So for me, it's still, can they hold ship and continue? Yeah, I think so, but I don't know. It is concerning, like all the Doge, like how much time is he going to spend elsewhere and not innovating with Tesla? But he's also done it with SpaceX and some others. So at this point, you kind of got to throw your hands up and be like, all right, this is how he is, and long term he'll hold it together.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of dig into that a bit more, do you think like the board can rein him in? Can anybody rein Elon in? Like, will the stock price can it get so depressed that even he's like, oh, maybe I went a little too far here? Or is he just kind of going to do what he wants to do? And these billionaires, hey,
That's
welcome.
a
I'm
good
going to do,
question.
I'm
I
going to
would
do my
I would
thing.
say they can't reel him in. I don't think he's the type of guy you want to reel in.
Yeah.
You want to see where his energy and where his interests take him, and you hope that it is with like he's going to come back to this, and this is his being his baby. That like he does have powerful leaders in place, and he does. When he took over X, he's kind of the same questions, right? There's like, hey, is he going to have time for this? Now he's doing all this social media stuff. Is what's going to happen? And then he like, in the same week he has a plane launch and new robots come, like he still has leaders in place in executing his vision, and I think he jumps in and pushes his weight around a little more than normal and makes things happen. So I think this is one of those things that we had to hold your breath and hope this thing goes well, because we don't
Yeah.
know. Like, truthfully, we don't know.
Yeah. I think the
I
brand,
agree with I the
yeah.
one thing I will say is, like, with the debt the way it is and the inefficient spend, I don't know what to believe that's out there right now, but it does seem like there's some inefficiencies that need to be fixed, and if he can fix them, the long-term health of the country will be in a better place. Now, how he does it, God knows how that's going to all go play out, but it seems like there's some truth in there in terms of like, hey, we need to get more efficient. We need to get the debt down for the company aside, for the good of the economy. He needs to fix this. So I'm with it on that front. How it gets done, I have no idea.
Yeah.
That's over my head.
Yeah. It's hard for me to look at it with a super objective view, just to be honest on this. But I think if I were to try to, I think that, yeah, is there waste within the government? I don't think anyone's going to say that's not occurring. But I think the way in which like some of the firings and everything was done by just the executive branch and by someone who's like an advisor, as opposed to just like going through the other branches of government that kind of appropriated money towards some of these organizations, that that seems like a slippery slope, to
Yeah.
be honest. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, I kind of go back to when I initially was like really into Tesla and the brand, what they're doing, good for the environment, the cars, and like it's really superior, car. It's amazing. And like a lot more progressive people were like, yeah, this is great. And how he just made a complete 180 has to be studied at some point about
Yeah.
kind of the demo that now supports him. And I don't know, man. We're marketers. Makes you think a lot about brand, the importance of brand building, how it can, kind of, if you're not careful, it can have a really negative impact
Yes.
as well in the opposite direction. And I wonder, how much of a cautionary tale we're seeing here, because there are a lot of people rooting against him now that wouldn't have necessarily otherwise if he hadn't been kind of as involved in some of these other things. And ultimately, is that worth it with all the designs and everything else he wants to do? Like, isn't it better to just have a larger TAM?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It reminds me of Michael Jordan. Republicans buy sneakers too, just staying out of it. Like the, we'll see. I agree. It's like this. The turn he's taken is really wild. I try to be objective and just listen to it as a but I have no idea. Like at this point, I'm so far removed from it. I feel like that I don't
Yeah.
really know what to think anymore. It seems like it's hard to track down what really happened. It's like I don't really know. I don't really have the time to sit down and figure out every issue where's the truth in the middle. Like it's hard.
Yeah.
It's the hardest it's ever been. Like supposedly we've opened up the internet and things are easier and like everyone can report. It's just gotten even more cloudy than ever. Like, and it makes me question like, hey, what I learned in the past, was that muddy also? And I just didn't have the ability. I don't even know at this point. That's the hard part. So I'm kind of like just cautiously optimistic about it. I take everything with a grain of salt. Whatever anyone says, I'm like, all right, I don't know. I don't know. Which is
All
a
right,
weird.
all right. Well, if we had to push you and say, okay, well, where is the stock price or where is the company going to be at, end of 2025? If I had to push you to say
End of this year, I think.
end of this year. What do you
So
think is going to
for
happen?
me, that's short term. For me, short term, I'm going to say flat down.
Down. Yeah.
That's my guess because he's got a lot of hurdles to get over in this next year, and I don't see Tesla is not. They are fast, but not that fast. So they're not going to be able to move things quick enough for it to turn around. Now, if you tell me 4 years from now, I'm going to say it's up. 1 year, I am a betting man. I'd bet down, but I don't day trade or whatever.
Yeah, same here.
Trade like that. So where it is in a year, I don't know. Like it's tougher to say, but I would say flat down. Partly cloudy kind of thing. I don't know. But again, I don't know. Like none of us know. Right? Like
we'll go back. Yeah, we'll go back to this at the end of the year and see. I think these predictions are fun. See where we
the entire economy scares me. Truth, like
oh my God,
we talked about it a while ago. Like I sold everything. I've been slowly buying stuff back. On the dips.
I'm hurting. This markets are hurting me right now. I look at my Fidelity account like, oh my God.
Yeah, some days you're up 15%, other days you're down. It's wild.
It's crazy.
Like, it is pretty crazy. But it's one of those things. You say you stick it out for the long term, and you just average in, and you don't worry about the blips in the radar, and you just keep rolling.
Yes,
it's hard to do though. I'm not gonna lie. Like looking at it, I'm like, whoa.
I can't do it. Like once a week, I'll take a look and just kind of as I manage my finance expenses. But other than that, I can't look on a daily basis anymore. It's too much.
Yeah, it is. It is wild. It is a roller coaster.
Well, maybe in some more kind of like hopeful news, there's been a lot of, one of the big stories, not only just this week, but kind of like over the past maybe month or so, has been an uptick in M&A activity within Silicon Valley, particularly among big tech. And, the theme right now seems to be a lot of the smart companies, they're building, they're investing in this new technologies, new AI technologies, et cetera, and GPUs, but they're also buying. They're opening up their purses with kind of new administration and new opportunities for M&A activity. In 2025, we've seen this huge uptick. So some of the deals that we may be familiar with or that y'all have heard about, Google acquiring Wiz for $32 billion. I think it's all cash, and one of the largest cybersecurity acquisitions ever. I think it's Google's largest acquisition ever as a means of shoring up their cloud security stack to compete with Microsoft for the enterprise. You had the Synopsys acquisition, that's for semiconductor simulation software space. IBM with HashiCorp for like $6.4 billion to have more hybrid cloud infrastructure I think MongoDB also did a small deal recently for about 220 million for their app developer ecosystem. And so it's interesting, right? Like these aren't panic acquisitions. These are very, strategic offensive plays. You see AI and cloud appear to be the real battlegrounds of where a lot of the money is being spent, and everyone wants to, own their infrastructure or enhance their developer ecosystems, and M&A is the best means of doing that. So I think over the past few years, like not been a lot of M&A activity. I was for sure hoping, Discord IPOs at some point and some other companies I've been involved with, but it seems like it's opening up now, and this is like the play within the new ecosystem. It's less about IPOs, more about acquiring companies. What do you think? Is this healthy for the ecosystem? Is it not? Are you happy about it? What are your general thoughts?
I mean, it's a little scary in that these bigger companies are just acquiring and getting bigger and bigger, but it is kind of what we've talked about, which is, hey, at this point, if you're in a path of growth, it's one of these companies going to buy you out, right? Like, and we're seeing it, like Google and Apple. Like, there's only so many platforms, so many options, and these guys are smart enough to know, hey, we can't be on top of everything, so we're going to start acquiring, and it makes sense. It's like
Yeah,
it's just these, Pac-Man's getting bigger and bigger and just eating up more and more. So we'll see what happens and how long this ain't. But we've said it. It's so hard now to grow a separate business without
yeah,
one of these giant behemoths support. So it
yeah,
makes sense that they would ultimately get to a place like, all right, we need to be, built into an OS, or we need to be built into an infrastructure, and that usually means a Google, an Apple, Microsoft acquiring you, right? Like, because
yeah.
otherwise you're competing with them, and it's hard to acquire the
Oh
resources.
man,
If you're not, I mean, TikTok spent billions of dollars to get where they are, so it's tough. I think this is just the way it is right now. Like, I hate to say it,
yeah,
but like, I don't know if you want to call it monopolies, but like the way to market yourself as a company, ultimately at some point you plateau and you need support.
yeah.
You need to be, default, so to speak.
Yeah, you need to be default live. And I think a lot of it is also the public markets right now with this new administration are just so volatile that some companies that may have been really willing to kind of like IPO and play the markets, like, they're not trying to do that with within this environment because there's not a clear sense of kind of where everything is going.
Right.
It's
Right.
incredibly ambiguous, and also I feel like the bar for IPO is much higher. Not only is it incredibly volatile, these companies, their operating margins and amount of spending for R&D and like kind of the ROI that they're getting, everything is just held to such a higher standard, like all companies, that has created, a challenging market. So on the one hand, I'm really happy about, M&A activity, and just I think it's healthy for, where we're at in Silicon Valley, for people to have upside, for people to be working and slogging for a decade plus at a place and being able to kind of get some meaningful benefit out of that, especially since so few companies actually achieve those heights. On the other end, it's like, man, well, the other path of the IPO almost seems kind of impossible to do unless you're like a Klarna or something like that that's really crushed. So I have mixed feelings about
Yeah,
the
it's really
markets right now.
tricky. Yeah, it's an interesting time right now if you're in that business of, hey, should we IPO? How do we become a household name? Like we've talked about, it's tough. It's a tough market right now, and you got to be really innovative. You got to be really cutting edge to get your name out there like that.
Yeah.
Good times though,
Yeah. I mean, M&A
honestly.
volume up 30% year over year, 2025, based off of like Crunchbase insights. And but what's interesting though is the median deal size is down. A lot of like tuck-in acquisitions, like basically, a lot of acquihires
Yep.
as opposed to kind of huge platform bets. So,
Hey, we
uh,
both been a part of it. It's
yeah,
it's not quite the IPO. I think personally, I think it's better when you get acquired, because then you just absorb. I'm sure you get, a new vesting schedule and all that, but it
yeah,
to me it's like, all right, you immediately get acquired, and then you see the stock price and its history, and you kind of get absorbed into that. But it feels a little more, having been through both. The IPO is stressful because you really don't know, like, and you got,
yeah,
the volatility of the market right now, like you said, it's risky. Like,
yeah. It is risky.
it'd be pretty scary. Like, you'd much rather be tucked under an Amazon or Apple or Google.
Yeah, yeah. It's also because like especially a lot of these AI companies right now that, you see these crazy ARR numbers like, oh yeah, I've only been around for 6 months and got like 80 million ARR, et cetera. And like, I wonder how real that stuff is.
Yeah, exactly.
In that, one, to the point that you're making, incumbents can kind of just copy what they're doing, and then they have the distribution to just kill them. And then the other piece is a lot of people are just playing around with AI tools right now. And I'm not saying that we've talked about it enough that everybody knows we think the AI, like, that's the space you should be investing in. But some of the stuff, like, is the revenue retention past like a year actually that sticky, or 6 months, et cetera, where people are just kind of playing around with tools before those larger incumbents either make the whole thing, or it's just kind of a novelty. We'll see. That's the piece that is kind of the known unknown.
Yeah. I mean, I play around a lot more with ChatGPT, and it's definitely got a lot of bugs. Like, just the other day, I was like, all right, I need to know how big my ring is. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I took a picture next to a quarter, and I was like, all right, tell me how, like, you should be able to figure out how big my ring is. What size is it? Give me all the measurements. It did it like 10 times. It couldn't figure it out. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's interesting. Then I was
Mm-hmm.
I was doing some stuff with the Libra app for a blood glucose monitor for my mom.
Oh yeah.
Same deal. I put in its history. I was like, all right, give me, what do you think? Couldn't do it. It was like, hey, analyzing, it's down right now. You can try it later. Tried it later. It still said it doesn't work. And so a lot of bugs. Like anything
Yeah.
that's like, all right, a little that requires a little more computing power, it tends to, like, at least what I've seen, reject it. Like,
Yeah.
give me the measurements of this with a quarter next to it. Like, you got to figure out the quarter size. You got to
Mm-hmm.
figure out the diameter, and you got to do some, like, it couldn't do it. I
Mm.
literally tried like 10 times. Like, all right, well, at this point, I just want you to do it. I don't even care what the answer is. Couldn't do it. Tried 10 times.
I'll have to try that. I haven't tried that. I haven't done something like that as an example. I've been using it as like Copilot for stuff that I've been doing, but I'll try some of these other kind of physical world related stuff. See how well
Yeah,
it works.
I always try to play with things and be like, all right, instead of me going to look it up, can I really use ChatGPT?
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
I could go through my inbox and figure out what ring size it was, but I was like, no, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT, see if it can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
The answer was no, I couldn't figure it out.
So there's a lot going on, man. And I feel like every week, there's something to talk about. If there's a takeaway for folks who kind of made it this far into the pod, and hopefully you got in some value, based on the subject we talked about, like, being flexible and adaptable within the jobs, and, trying out a bunch of different things, what's going on with kind of like Elon and government, and what that means for kind of tech landscape. And what's the takeaway in your mind of like how people should be kind of thinking about this time?
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think the people I'm talking to all seem to be in this spot where they're like, "Hey, I don't really know what's going on. I'm gonna hold tight.
Yeah.
Maybe try to figure something out on my own." I feel like that's if everyone is doing that, then you probably should think about something else, which is what I think the advice we gave on the last one, which is play around with these tools, try to get better,
Yeah.
try to learn more. That's really where your head should be.
Mm-hmm.
I know everyone else is like, "Hey, I'm going to buckle in and see where this goes." But I think if you can use this time to your advantage and sort of figure that out, it's going to help you long term.
No, I think you're right. I think you got to lean in, and it can
Yeah,
feel overwhelming. But if you don't, everything is moving so quickly that you could very easily be kind of left behind within your area of expertise, and you just can't let that happen. To be honest, you just can't let that happen.
yeah, you can. I think it's so easy for people who are probably a few years, 5 years, 10 years into their career, like, hey, this is what I know, this is what I'm comfortable with. I'm kind of
Mm,
sticking to this. I
yeah.
think that's the wrong move, right? We
Yeah.
just talked. I think that's the wrong move. That's the
Yeah.
wrong mentality right now to say, hey, I've got a job, I'm comfortable, I'm going to chill until I figure this out. I think that could bite you later. So I
Yeah.
would say be more adventurous and try to figure out the next thing, right? Because I
Yeah.
think you don't want it to just come up and get you where you have to do it on the fly. I'd much
Yeah.
rather you be out there and trying things and be like, you know what, this is good. I know the basics, and if I lose my job, my company goes under, whatever, I can do this or I can do
Yeah.
that. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. Yeah,
I love that. I think that's a great closing sentiment. Basically, but like, be proactive and not passive.
yeah, yeah.
Like, don't
When
be.
everyone else is doing that, you should probably not do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That I think you're right. I think that's the right take.
Appreciate your time. 37 minutes in.
Yes, sir. No, this is
Great.
great.
Until
And
next week. Leave comments if you want something else. to talk about, we'll jump on it.
Sounds good,
Peace
man.
out.